The impossible reading. The Empire of Silora had ruled the stars for over 10,000 years. Their people were perfect, superior to all others. Their society was built on strength, power, and absolute control. And above all, they believed in destiny. Each Solarian carried a soulmate indicator, a sacred device bound to their genetics. It was said to be flawless. It only activated when they touched their one true match, the partner nature had chosen for them. For Empress Lyraya, the most powerful ruler in Solarian history, her indicator had never glowed for anyone. And that was exactly how she wanted it. Until today. The unexpected contact. Lyraya stood in the royal palace, her piercing golden eyes scanning the chamber. In front of her, representatives from Earth had arrived. Humans. Weak. Primitive. Unworthy of sharing the same air as her people. But they had proven themselves resourceful, expanding into space faster than anyone expected. And now, for the first time in history, Earth and Silora were discussing an alliance. The thought of working with humans made Lyraya's blood boil, but politics demanded her presence. She took her place on the throne of obsidian, watching the human delegation step forward. Among them, a tall man with dark hair and sharp blue eyes. His uniform bore the insignia of Earth's military. Captain Ethan Carter. Lyraya barely spared him a glance. Humans were nothing to her. But then, he tripped. For just a fraction of a second, he lost his balance, reaching out. His hand brushed against Lyraya's. And the world exploded. The impossible activation. Lyraya's soulmate indicator, silent for her entire life, lit up like a dying star. A surge of golden energy shot from the device on her wrist, filling the chamber with light and sound. The air crackled. The ground shook. Everyone froze. The royal guards drew their weapons, unsure of what was happening. But Lyraya, she couldn't move. Her breath caught in her throat. Her mind screamed, "This is a mistake. The soulmate indicator must be malfunctioning." It had to be. But deep inside, she knew the truth. This was real. Her perfectly calibrated soulmate bond had just reacted. And it had reacted to a human. The shocked Empress. The room fell into stunned silence. The Solarian council members stared in horror. The humans, confused, had no idea what just happened. Captain Ethan Carter blinked. Sorry about that." Lyraya's blood boiled. This was wrong. This was impossible. She was an empress, the most powerful Solarian in history. There was no way her fated match was a mere human soldier. She ripped the soulmate indicator from her wrist, crushing it in her palm. Then she turned to the council, her voice sharp as a blade. "Take him away." The guards hesitated. "Your Majesty." Now, the human who didn't understand. Ethan didn't resist as two Solarian guards grabbed him. He raised an eyebrow. "Okay, is this how you guys say hello? Because if so, I gotta say." A guard slammed a hand over his mouth. Ethan sighed. "Right. No jokes. Got it." He had no idea what just happened. 1 second, he accidentally touched the Empress. The next, she looked like she wanted to kill him, and her reaction wasn't just anger. For a brief moment, when their hands touched, he had seen something in her eyes. Fear. Real, genuine fear. And that made no sense. What could possibly scare someone like her? The Empress in denial. Back in her chambers, Lyraya paced. Her hands shook with rage. Her mind was spinning. She needed an explanation. Something, anything, to prove that the soulmate indicator had malfunctioned. She called upon the royal scientists. "I want the readings recalibrated," she ordered. One scientist hesitated. "Your Majesty, the device is flawless. If it reacted." "I said it." The scientist nodded nervously and hurried away. Lyraya gritted her teeth. Her pulse was too fast. Her breathing was too uneven. She clenched her fists. This was nothing. It had to be nothing. She would fix this. She would remove him from her mind. She would forget about this human. Cliffhanger. But could she? That night, as Lariah closed her eyes, exhaustion finally pulling her into sleep, she dreamed. Not of her palace, not of her empire, but of him, of Ethan. His voice, his memories, his thoughts. She was inside his mind, and he was inside hers. Lariah woke up gasping. Her soulmate bond with Ethan wasn't just active. It was getting stronger, and no matter how much she denied it, she knew one thing for certain. There was no going back. The Empress rejects fate. The empire of Silara was built on strength, power, and destiny. Their rulers did not falter. They did not question. They did not fear. And yet, Empress Lariah, the strongest of them all, was terrified. Because her soulmate indicator had linked her to a human, a species inferior to her own, a species that should have never been compatible with a Xilarian. And no matter how much she denied it, the bond wasn't breaking. It was growing stronger. The impossible connection. Lariah sat in the Royal Medical Bay, surrounded by her top scientists. Her wrist, where the soulmate indicator once sat, still tingled from the touch. It was irrational. She refused to believe it. "This must be an error," she said coldly. The device was clearly defective. The lead scientist hesitated. "Your Majesty, the readings were clear. Run them again." "We already have. 3 times. Lariah's golden eyes narrowed. She clenched her fists, her voice dangerously low. "Then explain." The scientist swallowed. "We can't." Lariah's jaw tightened. "You mean to tell me," she said, "that my genetically perfected soulmate indicator, an ancient technology created to ensure the purity of our bloodlines, has linked me to a mere human, a primitive, a soldier, a man who should not even be worth my gaze?" Silence. The scientist's voice was barely above a whisper. "Yes." Lariah's blood boiled. "This is not happening." The bond strengthens. Ethan Carter did not expect to be thrown in a cell. One moment, he was shaking hands with diplomats, and the next, he was a prisoner. For what? Tripping, accidentally touching the Empress. He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Hell of a first impression," he muttered. Then, he felt it, a whisper in his mind. Not words, not thoughts, but emotion. Anger, frustration, denial. Ethan frowned. That wasn't his. His head snapped up. Something was wrong. The Empress struggled. Lariah stormed back to her private chambers. She needed to clear her mind. But the moment she closed her eyes, she saw him, not through her own vision, through his. Ethan Carter, sitting in a prison cell, rubbing his temples. She could feel his confusion, his frustration. Her chest tightened. No, 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 no. This bond was not supposed to be real. She had spent her life believing she was untouchable. No one was worthy of her. And now, the bond was making her feel things she should never feel. Weakness, desire, curiosity. This cannot be happening. She grabbed a dagger from her belt. If the bond wouldn't break naturally, she would break it herself. The council demands blood. Deep in the Grand Council chamber, Silarian nobles gathered. They had heard the rumors. The Empress' soulmate indicator had linked her to a human. An outrage, a disgrace. Grand Advisor Valus spoke first. "This cannot be allowed," he hissed. "The Empress' genetic purity must be protected. The bond must be erased." Another agreed. A third voice, sharper than the rest. "Kill him." The room fell silent. Then, nodding. Agreement. A decision was made. The human must die. Lariah's last attempt. Lariah stood in front of a glowing energy chamber, the dagger trembling in her grip. This was it. The ancient machine in front of her was forbidden technology. It could sever any connection, erase any bond. She lifted the blade, and then pain ripped through her chest. She staggered back, gasping. The pain wasn't hers. It was Ethan's. Cliffhanger. The assassination begins. In the prison cell, Ethan winced. His chest tightened with pain, as if something had just tried to tear him apart. The guards outside his cell moved. Then, a whisper through the air. A cold, deadly voice. "Kill him now." Ethan barely had time to react before the door slid open. A Xilarian assassin stood before him, blade in hand. Lyraya, still gasping from the pain, felt it. Her soulmate was about to die. Her instincts roared. Her blood ignited. And for the first time, she stopped fighting the bond. Because if Ethan did, she would lose a part of herself forever. Lyraya vanished in a flash of golden light, and when she reappeared, she was standing between Ethan and the assassin. Her dagger clashed against the assassin's blade. Her golden eyes burned. Her voice was absolute. "Touch him, and I will burn this empire to the ground." Hunted by her own people, the Xilarian Empire had never known rebellion. Until now. Empress Lyraya, once their most feared ruler, had just defied the Grand Council. She had saved a human, a crime punishable by death. And now she and Ethan Carter were running for their lives. The escape begins. The assassin's blade was still locked against Lyraya's dagger. The moment of shock in the guard's eyes was all she needed. She struck. With inhuman speed, she twisted the assassin's wrist, forcing him to drop the weapon. Ethan reacted fast, grabbing the blade before it hit the ground. More guards rushed in. Lyraya grabbed Ethan's arm. "Move." They ran. Through the palace halls, past towering columns of Xilarian stone, their footsteps echoing like war drums. Behind them, a full execution squad. Her own people, hunting her. The order for her death. Deep within the Grand Council chamber, Advisor Valus stood before the ruling elites, a room filled with high-ranking warlords, scholars, and politicians. They had ruled the galaxy for millennia. And today, they had just been betrayed. "The Empress has been compromised," Valus declared. The nobles murmured in shock, outrage, and fear. "This bond," Valus sneered, "this unnatural connection with a human, it is a threat to our purity, to our empire." A cold silence filled the chamber. Then the decision was made. A galactic-wide order was sent to every Xilarian fleet. Lyraya is no longer our empress. She is a traitor. She must be hunted down and eliminated. Ethan's awakening. They had made it to the lower docking bay. Ethan could still hear the alarms screaming across the palace. Lyraya was breathing hard, her golden eyes burning with anger. Ethan gripped his stolen dagger. "Okay, question," he said between breaths. "What the hell is happening to me?" Lyraya turned to him. "You're..." She stopped. Her vision flickered, and for the first time she saw it. Ethan's body was changing. His pulse was too strong. His reflexes were too fast. His eyes, they weren't just human anymore. The bond was not just connecting them. It was changing him. He wasn't just human now. He was something more. The hunters arrive. The docking bay doors slammed shut. A voice echoed through the chamber. Cold, sharp, absolute. "Lyraya, your reign is over." She turned and saw them. Xilarian royal executioners, the most elite warriors in the empire. Each one had been trained since birth to eliminate threats. Each one loyal only to the council. And today, their target was her. The leader, a towering warrior with dark silver skin, stepped forward. "Surrender now, Empress, or we will take your head." The hybrid fights back. Ethan felt something deep in his bones. A strange instinct, something older than himself. He knew, without being told, that the warriors in front of him were dangerous. They were faster, stronger, smarter. A new war begins. The stolen Xilarian warship shot through hyperspace, heading straight for Earth. Ethan Carter sat in the co-pilot's seat, his breath still heavy from the fight. His hands trembled, not from fear, not from exhaustion, but from power. He had just killed a Xilarian warrior with his bare hands. And the scariest part, it had felt natural. Leraya's realization. Leraya watched him from the pilot's seat, her mind racing. Ethan wasn't human anymore. She could feel it in their bond. The moment he had touched her, the moment the soulmate indicator had linked them, something inside him had changed. Something her people had never seen before. And if the Empire found out, they wouldn't just hunt them. They would tear Earth apart to destroy him. She had to warn him. She turned to him, voice steady. "Ethan, listen to me. You're changing." He exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah, no kidding." Leraya clenched her fists. "You don't understand. My bond, our bond, it's not just a link. It's biological. It's rewriting you." Ethan's blue eyes narrowed. "Rewriting?" Leraya's voice dropped. "You're becoming something else. Something neither human nor Xilarian." Silence. Then Ethan's voice was calm. "Then what the hell am I?" The Empire's next move. Deep within the Grand Council chambers, Advisor Valus stood before a massive galactic display. It showed a single red dot. The stolen Xilarian ship, heading straight for Earth. Valus turned to his generals. "Send the fleet." A Xilarian officer hesitated. "A full invasion force. Against Earth." Valus' golden eyes burned. "We are not here for Earth. We are here for her." He pointed at Leraya's signal. "And for him." His voice darkened. "Because if that human is truly evolving, then he is the greatest threat that the Xilarian Empire has ever faced." 1,000 warships began mobilizing. Earth had no idea what was coming. Crash landing on Earth. The ship broke through Earth's atmosphere. Alarms blared. The hull was burning. Ethan grabbed the controls. "We're coming in too fast." Leraya's grip tightened. "I can't stabilize it." The ship screamed through the sky, cutting through clouds like a meteor. Below them, Earth's defense systems locked onto them. Missiles launched. Shields failing. Ethan shouted. Leraya gritted her teeth, braced for impact. The ship slammed into the ground, tearing through the earth, metal screaming as it skidded across a barren wasteland. Then, silence. Smoke rose from the wreckage. Inside, Ethan groaned. "Well, that sucked." Leraya pulled herself up, her golden eyes already scanning the area. They had landed somewhere remote. A desert. No cities in sight. For now, they were safe. But not for long. Because in the distance, Earth's military was already moving. The hybrid's true power. Ethan stood, still shaking off the crash. And then, he felt it. A pulse of energy deep in his chest. His vision sharpened. His hearing expanded. He could hear Leraya's heartbeat. Not just hers. The heartbeat of every living thing around them. He staggered back. "What the hell?" Leraya's eyes widened. "Your body is adapting." Ethan gripped his chest. "This isn't normal." She shook her head. "No, it's something new." Ethan clenched his fists. He could feel something deep inside him. Something waiting to be unleashed. And for the first time in his life, he realized. He was no longer just human. The war comes to Earth. Above them, the sky darkened. Leraya's heart stopped. She looked up and saw the impossible. The Xilarian fleet had arrived. 1,000 warships hovering over Earth. A voice boomed through the air. "Humans, surrender, the traitors, or EFACTOTL eradication." Leraya's fists tightened. The Empire had come for them, and they weren't here to negotiate. Ethan's breath was calm. Steady. Ready. "Guess we're doing this, huh?" Leraya turned to him, her golden eyes fierce. "No, Ethan. We're finishing this." Cliffhanger. The final stand begins. The first Silurian dropships landed on Earth. Warriors poured out, weapons glowing. Humanity scrambled to fight back. But the truth was clear. This wasn't just a battle. This was a war for survival. Lyraea stepped forward, fire in her veins. Ethan stood beside her, the bond between them stronger than ever. The Silurians thought they were hunting a traitor. They didn't realize. They had just awakened something far greater, and Ethan Carter was about to show them exactly what that meant. The battle for Earth. The skies burned. Silurian warships loomed over Earth's atmosphere, their presence casting shadows over the cities below. For the first time in history, humanity was under siege. And the enemy, their former allies. The Silurian Empire had come for Lyraea and Ethan. But now they faced something unexpected. A human who was no longer just human. Earth's last stand. At the UN Military Command Center, sirens blared as generals scrambled for solutions. Admiral Ren Carter, Ethan's uncle, stood at the center of the war room. His eyes locked onto the massive fleet above Earth. "Get me every available ship. We're not letting them take our planet without a fight." A junior officer hesitated. "Sir, we're outnumbered 100 to 1. Ren clenched his fists. "Then we make every damn ship count." Ethan's first true power. Ethan stood in the wreckage of their crashed ship, watching the Silurians descend. His body hummed with energy. His heartbeat wasn't just his own anymore. He could feel Lyraea's pulse. He could hear every sound, every breath, every shift in the battlefield. The bond was fully activated. He had become something new. And the Silurians. They had no idea what they were about to face. Lyraea placed a hand on his shoulder. "Can you feel it?" she whispered. Ethan exhaled. "I can do more than feel it." He turned to the sky and jumped. The sky war begins. The Silurian troops on the ground barely had time to react. One moment, Ethan was standing on Earth. The next, he was flying. Not with technology, not with boosters, with pure force. The bond had rewritten his entire body. His cells were no longer fully human. And for the first time, he realized he was as strong as them. Maybe stronger. He crashed into the first Silurian warship, tearing through the hull with nothing but his bare hands. The ship exploded, sending flames through the sky. Below, human forces stared in shock. Did that guy just? Was that Ethan Carter? In the command center, Admiral Ren's eyes widened. His nephew had just taken down a Silurian warship without a weapon. What the hell did he become? Ren whispered. The answer was simple. Something unstoppable. The Silurian Emperor's fear. Inside the command ship, Advisor Valus watched in horror. His fleet was being pushed back. Not by human weapons, not by human ships, but by one man. A human. A mistake. A being that was never supposed to exist. "This is impossible," he muttered. The Silurian Emperor himself stepped forward, his golden robes shimmering. He had seen many wars. He had destroyed many civilizations. But never had he seen something like this. A human who was fighting like a god. His voice was cold, absolute. "Activate the Harbinger." The room fell silent. The general stiffened. "But, my lord, if we activate that weapon, it will." The Emperor turned, his golden eyes glowing with ancient power. "If we do not stop him now, we will never stop him. The Harbinger is our last chance." And with a single command, the most dangerous weapon in Silurian history was unleashed. The Harbinger awakens. The sky split open. A massive structure, nearly the size of Earth's moon, decloaked above the planet. It was not a ship. It was something older. Something that had been built long before the Silurian Empire even existed. A relic of a time when their species had faced annihilation. A weapon that could erase entire planets. And now, it was pointed at Earth. Leraya's breath caught in her throat. No. She grabbed Ethan's arm. We have to stop it. If they fire that, Earth is gone. Ethan looked up. His heart was steady. His pulse calm. He met her gaze. Then let's end this. And in the blink of an eye, he launched himself straight toward the Harbinger. Cliffhanger. The final confrontation. Inside the Harbinger's control room, the Xilarian Emperor stood at the activation panel. The countdown had begun. Fire in 90 seconds. The Emperor watched as a golden blur shot toward them. Ethan Carter. A being who should have never existed. His eyes narrowed. Let's see if you are truly worthy of this universe, human. The final battle had begun, and the fate of Earth, Solara, and the future itself hung in the balance. The final ascension. A Harbinger loomed over Earth, its ancient weapons warming up, pulsing with energy. This was not just a war. This was extermination. The Xilarian Empire had never lost before, and they would not lose now. Unless Ethan Carter proved them wrong. Unless he became something more. The human who shouldn't exist. Ethan rocketed through the sky, his body cutting through the atmosphere like a comet. He wasn't using a ship. He wasn't using tech. He was using pure force. He felt no pain. He felt no exhaustion. He felt limitless. As he soared toward the Harbinger, he heard Leraya's voice in his mind. Ethan, this is suicide. That thing isn't a warship. It's a god-killer. He grinned. Good. I was starting to get bored. Leraya's frustration burned through their bond. This isn't funny. I won't let you throw yourself away. Ethan slowed, floating just outside the Harbinger's massive structure. His eyes glowed with golden fire. I'm not throwing myself away. I'm ending this. And with a single breath, he punched straight through the Harbinger's hull. The Emperor's last stand. Deep inside the Harbinger's core, the Xilarian Emperor stood tall. He had ruled for centuries. He had seen empires rise and fall. And now, he was about to face something he did not understand. The chamber doors tore apart. A figure stepped through, smoke and golden energy trailing from his body. Ethan Carter. The Emperor studied him. The human's body was no longer human. His cells had rewritten themselves beyond anything science could explain. Ethan was stronger, faster, beyond the limits of any species. He was the result of a bond that was never supposed to happen. And that meant only one thing. You are an anomaly. Ethan smirked. Yeah, that's what my high school teacher said too. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. You are a mistake. His hands lifted. And the Harbinger's entire power grid shifted toward him. A beam of pure cosmic energy, capable of wiping Earth from existence, charged behind him. You will not survive this. Ethan cracked his neck. Then I guess we'll find out, huh? The ultimate duel. The Harbinger shook as Ethan and the Emperor clashed. The force of their battle ripped apart the ancient walls. Each strike from Ethan sent shockwaves across the station. Each counter from the Emperor was faster than light. This wasn't a fight between a man and an alien. This was a fight between evolution and extinction, and Ethan was winning. For the first time in centuries, the Emperor felt something strange, something that should not exist in a Xilarian ruler. Fear. What are you? Ethan grinned. He grabbed the Emperor by the throat and threw him across the chamber. The future. Leraya's final choice. Outside, Leraya felt everything. The battle, the power, the fear. She could feel Ethan slipping further into something beyond control. The bond was changing him, not just physically, mentally. He was becoming something more, something not human, not Xilarian, something dangerous. And if she didn't stop this, she might lose him forever. A Harbinger's weapon was still charging. One shot, and Earth would be erased. She had one chance to stop it, and she had to decide. Save Ethan, or stop the Harbinger. The decision that changed everything. She made her choice. With a single burst of speed, she launched toward the Harbinger's weapon core. Ethan and the Emperor were still fighting, their blows shaking the entire station. Leia reached the console and saw the countdown. 10 seconds until planetary erasure. She didn't hesitate. She slammed her hands into the control panel, linking her mind to the Harbinger system, and she rewrote the final command. The last words of a dying empire. The Emperor's eyes widened as he felt the Harbinger's energy shift. Something was wrong. Ethan wiped blood from his lip. Looks like your fancy doomsday weapon isn't working. The Emperor staggered back. No, this is not possible. Then, the Harbinger's AI spoke. Target reprogrammed. New firing coordinates locked. The Emperor's heart stopped. The weapon was no longer pointed at Earth. It was pointed at the Xilarian homeworld. Ethan turned to the hologram. Well, that's ironic. The Emperor screamed. But before he could react, Ethan lifted his hand, and with one final strike, he shattered the Emperor's body into dust. The fall of an empire. The Harbinger fired. A beam of cosmic energy tore through space. The Xilarian homeworld, once the most powerful planet in the galaxy, was erased from existence. The war was over. The empire was gone. And all that remained was Leia and Ethan, the last Xilarian and the first hybrid. Cliffhanger. The new beginning. Ethan stood in the ruins of the Harbinger, breathing heavily. The power inside him was still growing. Leia approached, her golden eyes soft but uncertain. You changed everything. Ethan turned to her. His expression was unreadable. So did you. For a moment, there was silence. Then she whispered, "What are we now?" Ethan looked out at the stars. The old world was gone. The future, unwritten. He smirked. Let's find out. The screen fades to black. The end.